Hi everybody, this is Ryan and this is lesson 11 of learning JavaScript. In this lesson we'll be learning about while loops. Once again we link to our external script file and we have a place where we can output our result. In our script file we have our anonymous function which executes once the document is finished loading. The same rules apply to a while loop as what applied to our for loop. We need to have some sort of initialize. We need to have a test and a modifier. So we start with our initializer. This is now done before the while loop, which is a bit different to the for loop. Inside our brackets of our while loop we do our test as before. But you'll notice that there's no modifier in the brackets. The modifier actually comes in the curly brackets. Okay, so there you can see from the output we have the numbers from 1 to 10 with a space in between each number. So this we could just as well have written with the for loop, but this just shows you how the while loop can do the same thing. The difference is to remember that the initialize takes place before the loop begins. The test takes place in the same place as where the for loop's test took place, in the brackets, but the modifier actually takes place in the while loop itself. So any of the previous exercises we did with the for loop can also be done with the while loop. The while loop is just a little bit more cumbersome to write sometimes. That's why I normally prefer using the for loop for most things. But the while loop does have another advantage in that you can loop while a certain condition is true. So for example, if I wanted to write a program to roll a dice, and I wanted to count how many times it took before I could roll a 6. Now obviously this is a totally random event, because for you it might take 4 rolls before you get a 6, and for me it might take 10 rolls before I get a 6. So with a for loop you always need to loop a certain number of times, so it would loop 10 times or 20 times. With a while loop you may not necessarily know how many times you are looping before you achieve your goal. So you might phrase it like this. You might say, while the dice is not equal to 6, do something. Obviously you won't say dice plus plus, you would have some sort of formula to roll the dice. But the point is that we don't know how many times this while loop is going to run. It will run until such time as we hit a 6, and then it will stop. But the same rules still apply. The test needs to be attainable, so at some point it needs to fail the test, and at the same time it needs to pass the test a couple of times as well, otherwise it will never execute. Okay, so that ends our lesson in working with while loops.